Welcome to the Progressive Army's third panel on the Black Lives Matter and other associated organizations. This panel is my personal favorite, and I've been blessed enough to have won the lottery and been able to manage this panel. This panel is on the factors: education, socioeconomics, and poverty. And we have some esteemed guests. We're going to start off with Senator Nina, former Senator Miss Nina Turner. I'm sure everyone here knows her and knows of her. She's an amazing person. She's an amazing speaker. She was an excellent surrogate for Bernie Sanders this cycle. And without any further ado, I'm gonna let her introduce herself to you guys. Nina, please.
Hi, Michael. Yes, certainly it's great to be with the Progressive Army. You guys are doing the thing and getting it done, and we need to have these kinds of conversations with the family over the long haul to know that our mission continues, the work continues. It doesn't begin and end with any one election. And I know a lot of progressives, especially the Bernie-crats in particular, are really feeling, work is over, but it's not over. And so we must continue to have not only these dialogues, but continue to talk about what types of policies we want to have those who are in the elected spaces to push, to lift our communities, and by extension, and hopefully to be a beacon for the world. So I'm excited to be with the Progressive Army.
All right, great. That was an amazing introduction. All right. You touched on something that we're gonna get a little bit deeper into about how we project ourselves to the world so people can see how things should be done. We have done the best job in our history, but hopefully things will get better because of conversations we're having like this. All right. So I'm going to just very quickly go over a little prepared statement about where this this conversation is going to be grounded. All right. So the purpose of this discussion is we're going to discuss the impact of race-based, policy-driven social and economic deprivation on the Black community, how these issues intersect to create criminogenic environments by engineering scarcity. Under-resourced education systems, lack of jobs, concentrated poverty offer limited pathways to change one's circumstances. This system does not allow for the community to build wealth, which exacerbates the lack of intergenerational wealth. This construct is a near caste system in which policing acts as an occupying, containing force that siphons off limited resources. Conflict is one of the many predictable outcomes. Okay, so that's a little bit of level setting about where we this is going to be our launching point. This is the system as we understand it, and we're going to try to discuss some things about how the system has existed in the past and try to find some paths forward. Nina, did you have anything to say about that?
Well, certainly the pathway to those opportunities, not exclusively, I mean, you need definitely public-private partnerships, but when you
Yes.
look at urban communities, and urban does not mean Black, it means city, but a lot of times when people hear the word urban, they automatically think Black and brown. And the last time I checked, white folks live in cities too, but we do understand the impact on cities. So when you have government in particular, because government is really designed for us to do collectively what we cannot do as individuals. We can't pave our own roads individually. We can't make sure that there's clean water coming out of our pipes individually. Hello, Flint, and hello, other places, because Flint is not, it's just a touchstone of the lead crisis that we have in this country. But when people think about those kinds of policies and the impact that they have on the Black community and whether or not it allows for our communities to grow, or does it hinder growth? So investment in education is a big one. Investment in infrastructure. I mean, we are so behind in this country in terms of infrastructure development. High-speed rail across this country, almost non-existent. And we look at other countries like China, for example, where they're about to build train systems that take passengers 200 miles per hour. We can't even get trains in this country that take us, even 100 miles per hour. But what does the lack of investment and requisite investment in urban centers where the overwhelming majority of Black and brown folks live, and how does that impact and determine future outcomes? And one other point I want to make, Michael, when we think about income and wealth inequality in this country, which is a very big deal. And I want to make an emphasis on wealth, because there's a difference between income, what you're earning, and what wealth is. What are you worth? And I'm giving some stats. I think this is from 2011. And so, pardon me, I know people can Google. Google is a verb. But I want to go from the 2011 stats that showed that white folks had wealth of six figures. $1,000 worth of wealth, the average white family wealth, and black families had less than $5,000. Most people are in the working poor category. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck, and so unless we are willing to deal with those deep issues, income and
Mm-hmm.
wealth inequality, most of the wealth of the middle class, whether they're black or white, is in their homes. You know, that Great Recession had a terrible impact on the working poor and middle class families, and a disproportionate impact on communities of color. So I'm really excited about these issues that the Progressive Army that we're talking about and elevating tonight. And it is my hope that when we go vote, not just in this election cycle, because there's an election every single year, but that we start scorecarding folks. We have to earn our
Mm-hmm.
vote. I don't care who they are. That we don't owe any Democrat or anybody our vote just because they have a D behind their name. What have they done for us lately? We need to take a page out of Sister Janet Jackson's book. What have you done
Yes.
for our folks lately?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because I mean, the reality is the Democratic Party does not float without the black vote.
Come
Oh, that
on, say
rhymes.
that. Sting
And
like
it
a
just
butterfly, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Yes.
yes, absolutely. And we just and we just it's too often that we say, okay, there's a D behind his or her name. That's the ticket. I understand that everybody's busy, everybody has a life to lead, but at the end of the day, what are you giving me for my vote? The vote, just because we have the right to
Right.
vote now, doesn't mean we should give it away for free. So let's start
That's right.
demanding some things from the people that demand our vote, because they sure are demanding our vote right now. So,
Oh yeah.
boy, are they. And, okay, so one of the things that this is one of my pet peeves about when we had these conversations is another one of these level setting things is the role of the conservative movement, the modern conservative movement on our lives. Okay, we often talk about the how the civil rights movement, how far ahead we came because of the civil rights movement. And one of the things that people don't realize is that ever since those bills were signed, the voting rights bill and the civil rights bill, ever since those things were signed, there has been a movement afoot to push us back every step of the way. For every step forward, somebody's trying to push us back 5 or 6, and that movement is the conservative movement. And some of those folks, uh, call it what you will, you can be upset at me if you want, but a lot of them got a D behind their name. Okay, that have worked to kind of push us back. So and I'm trying to get too political right now, so I'm gonna stop right there. In the fine state of Ohio, Nina, what kind of experiences have you had? I know you were when you were in Congress. Have you? I know you've seen this firsthand. Could you share an experience with us or something like that?
And well, just having people who have a firm commitment to our people,
Mm-hmm.
because you mentioned, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and progressive policies like that have lifted all people. We know that we started off in this country in not a way that was equal to anybody. I mean, let's just tell the truth. I mean, you had to be a wealthy land owning wealthy white male, point blank. I mean, even left the vanilla brothers who were poor out of the equation. But
Absolutely, absolutely.
we became a nation of progress from the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote, and et cetera, et cetera. We became a nation of progress because everyday people put a little extra on the ordinary, and they forced the grass tops, they forced the establishment class to make these changes. And
Absolutely.
I start there to say that any type of change and growth that we're going to see in the 21st century, whether it's criminal justice reform, God knows we need that. These the inequities within the justice system did not start with the police. It won't end with the police, but the police are agents of the state, and it is where we see our first entree into the criminal justice system is with the police. So whether it's true criminal justice reform or reforms in education, reforms and income and wealth inequality. All of those things start with the grassroots making a demand. I think Brother Frederick Douglass said that power concedes nothing without a struggle, without a demand. He said it never has and it never will. And so we find ourselves in the 21st century still fighting to social justice agenda. So, Mike, I'm not quite sure in terms of what I mean. I've seen a lot of things, you know, in my
I'm sure.
state, especially being in the elected ministry, some
Hmm.
good, some bad. But we need to stand with the people who are not only going to stand with us, but in terms of the elected space, stand with people who are willing to lose something, because far too many, and there are many noble elected officials, the elected
Absolutely.
ministry, as I like to call it. But there are those who will say what is necessary to get elected and won't do a daggone thing once they are. They just so giddy to get the position, but they forget that titles are good and purpose is better. And we have made great progress in this country, and we need to continue to make progress. But there are lots of people still suffering in this nation. And we need public policy makers who are willing to push the envelope so much so that they're willing to lose something.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And with on that note, and with all that prophetic fire, as Dr. West likes to say, we're gonna bring in our other panelists. Our first panelist is Zakiyah Ansari. She's a education activist and working out of New York. And we're also gonna bring in Jesse Smith. He's running for office in Alabama, running for Congress in Alabama, in Alabama's 3rd district. That is a uphill battle. Please give Jesse a hand, and I'm gonna let everybody introduce themselves. Zakiyah, if you don't mind.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Zakiyah Ansari. I'm actually the advocacy director for a statewide alliance in New York called the Alliance for Quality Education. And for the last 16 years, as Senator Turner talked about, for the last 16 years, we have been fighting to get an equity lawsuit called the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, fully funded. And right now, $3.9 billion, not M, but with a B, is owed to students in New York State, and we're still trying to get that money. 10 years later.
Wow. Okay, Jesse. It's not like New York didn't have the money. I'm sorry, Jesse.
Yes. Well, I'm just glad to be here. Again, I'm running for Congress in the 3rd district of Alabama, and when we think about education, we think about the state of Alabama was a state that was considering taking $400 million away from the education system to build prisons. So we have some very, very unique challenges here in this state, one of which we don't have any representatives at the federal level that supports the federal Department of Education. So, coming in with the mindset of I love public education. I'm a product of public education myself. So I'd say, I'm coming in with the mindset of doing what's necessary because no one else is willing to step up and be held accountable to make those tough decisions and to do what's right for the people. So I'm just, honored to have this opportunity to be with the Senator Nina Turner. I'm a huge fan. Ms. Zakiyah and Mr. Redwine. This is where the rubber meets the road in my eyes. I'm not a politician at heart, but I'm understanding the importance of becoming politically savvy and politically engaged. So again, I'm looking forward to furthering this discussion.
All right, that's good stuff right there. That's good stuff. All right, so as everyone can see, we have a powerful panel here before you, and we're gonna start really digging in now. We're gonna move on to the next subject, which is the policies that drive the system. Now we're gonna make this broad. Okay, there's basically, as I see it, because I did the outline, so so you're kind of stuck with my thoughts. All right, so the policies driving the system. We're talking about housing. Entitlements, what are called entitlements now, welfare, and other systems that support families in need, the criminal justice system, and banking and insurance. Now, these are some of the things that we have been systematically kept out of getting our fair share or getting our just dues as citizens here in this country. So I'm gonna go to Zakiyah. Of those things, Zakiyah, what do you think is the most impactful, or one of the most impactful in your eyes, in your experience?
Well, one thing I didn't say, I'm a mom of 8 and I have 3 grandchildren. And when I
Okay.
first started getting engaged in educational advocacy work, it was 16 years ago. And, you know, like many parents got involved through education. My children were doing fine, but that didn't mean that I didn't want to be engaged in supporting and helping children that looked like my children. And there were many parents who hadn't found their voice yet. And as I was learning to find mine, to this day, it's my obligation, I feel like my duty to foster that same kind of support for other parents, not only in New York, but around the country. And so for me, I think in all underlining all those things is around education. Because at the end of the day, if our young people can't sign contracts, much less read a contract, if they can't draw a contract, if they don't know if somebody's giving them a housing, something to look out under housing, and it's not a you know, the small print is there and they're not sure how to read it. If you go to a bank and you're being charged a fee, like at the end of the day, the underlying thing is education. And
Yeah.
to share that after 10 years in 2006, and to your point that you opened up with a Democratic governor, right? So for whatever that's worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
A Democratic governor, when he was a candidate, said that we have a tale of two, one for the rich, one for the poor, two educational systems. But now that he is the governor of this state, all of a sudden forgot about that lawsuit. Again, a decade. And I want to be clear, the money that is owed, the $3.9 billion goes to the neediest of children across New York State. That's Black, brown, and poor children. So if we're not willing to step up and take care of the neediest of us, right? Democrat, Republican, or otherwise, then what are we saying about those children? What are we saying about those communities? And I think it's for us, it's very clear. If it's been 10 years and you have not put forth the effort as a state legislature, as a governor, to make sure that our children have what they need, then I question, is it because they are Black and brown children that we have not lit the fire under level of urgency, actually state of emergency, to really support children. So I think underlying all those issues is making sure that we are fully funding public education.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, now, all right, we're going to let Jesse chime in on there. Thank you very much, Zakiyah.
Well, out of those issues, all of them, it's hard to pick. I mean, there's so many, you know, when you think of how inadequate our system really is. But I'd like to go to income, and I break income down into a couple of different categories. I'll try to do that fairly quickly. We know that income has a direct influence on how well kids do in school. So we also know that a large percentage of the population are working for wages that aren't livable wages. Okay. And to quote Senator Turner, we also know that women are still trying to get their whole damn dollar. And so when we incorporate all of that into the issue of education, we have the perfect storm. For example, if we raise the wages, but we can't raise the wages with the jobs that are currently existing. We can't justify raising the wage for someone who works at McDonald's in certain places, but we can justify providing Americans with a livable wage if we go into renewable energy. There's so many jobs out there with solar. We mentioned about high-speed rail. Where I am here in the city of Talladega, there's a major railway that runs through the heart of the city. And every day the traffic stops. But the only problem with that is not that the traffic is backed up. The problem that I have, there are no business transactions that are ongoing while that train is in this city. So economic development, income, offering people in these communities an opportunity to earn a livable wage is something that I believe we have to attack. And that's a major part of my platform is to not only provide livable wages, but create the industry, rebuild our infrastructure, create the jobs necessary that will that will say that, hey, this particular skill set requires $15 or more. So income, again, I believe where I am is a systemic problem that, you know, exacerbates the issues in education.
Okay. All right. Something. Before we go to Nina, before we go back to Nina, something Jesse shared with me in our first interview that still sticks with me now. He told me I forget the numbers. 1,200 bridges in Alabama cannot support the weight of a school bus. Is that correct, Jesse?
You're right. There are over 1,200 bridges that can't support the weight of a school bus. Alabama is the only state in America that doesn't have a safety program or plan to monitor the safety of our dam systems. So there's so many problems that are ongoing with regards to infrastructure rebuilding, which could definitely create the jobs that people are looking for.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to the next one. And we'll let because Miss Nita Turner already spoke on this issue, but we're gonna on my show, the Louisa Project 2027. Yes, that was a plug. And on my show, Louisa Project, we discuss education, right? We and these are the 5 things where what I've learned over time. And please, Zakiyah, if you ask something you want to add to this or something I need to take off this list because you're more of an expert in this field than I am. This is just education is my passion. I'm not an expert in any of this. So these are the things that I've learned over time that really impact education. Property taxes. That's a big one. All this funding, people being funded by schools being funded by local property taxes. So of course, if the property isn't worth much, you're not going to get much into the school system. The pressures, economic and social pressures on parents. Like Jesse spoke about income, and people aren't making much money, so you have to work 2 and 3 jobs, or you don't have a job, you become depressed, and so on and so forth. Lack of disposable income to donate to schools to supplement the failings of the property tax system. Low wages for teachers. You can't keep good teachers if you don't pay a good wage. And limited programs, especially in communities of color and communities of need. You don't have gifted programs. You don't have programs, special needs programs, and so on and so forth. So Nina, could you chime in on that before we let Zakiyah slay my little list?
Well, I I think it's a quite good list. I hope Sister Zakiyah agrees. But just what her and Brother Jesse had to say was so powerful. Education is the foundation. It is what and this is the historian in me. But when we think about the struggle of our ancestors, it was the thing that they ran to. Besides trying to find their kinfolk, they really invested in, because they understood the power of knowledge and what it could do, not just for them as individuals, but also generationally. And so if we have Black and brown and poor white children stuck in schools throughout this nation that are not preparing them for the 21st century economy, and that's really what we're talking about, is that gone are the days where high school diploma doesn't get it anymore. There was a time 50 to 100 years ago that's all you needed, you'd be just fine. But now you have got to have either a college degree or be highly skilled. Either way it goes, you have to have a skill set that is marketable in the marketplace. And so we have to continue to make sure that policymakers from the local level to the federal level make the requisite investments in our children, because the children of New York or Illinois are not just competing against the children of Ohio or California. They're competing against the children of other nations. They are world citizens. And so we have to make those investments in our young people if we care. Brother Frederick Douglass had a quote, and this is not exactly it, but he basically said that it's more beneficiary to invest in children than to try to rehabilitate grown men. But true that. And so if we can spend $80 billion a year as a nation to house people in prison, and most of these folks are low-level, non-violent offenders or people who are addicted to drugs, we can take some of that money and revamp the criminal justice system and take those types of offenders and get them the rehabilitation that they need to come out and be more productive citizens, and also take a portion of that money and make those requisite investments that we need in our children's education. And everybody might not go to college. I am a college professor, I get it. But we have to make sure that our young people are highly trained, highly skilled, so that they have something that's marketable in the marketplace. So, amen to what Brother Jesse and Sister Zakiyah said. And I know that my time is winding down, Michael. So I do want to say to folks that the power is really in the hands of the people, no matter what it's looking like out there. And we, unfortunately, in this election cycle, we've gone from 2008, yes, we can, to 2006, taking it straight to the streets, all the way in the gutter in this presidential election cycle. And it is weighing on people. The American Psychological Association did a survey that found that over 50% of the people in this country are stressed the hell out over this presidential election. And people, though, hope does spring eternal, and we can't just look to a great president to pull us out of this. We need great mayors. We need people to serve on city councils. That's why I'm so glad that Brother Smith is running for Congress. We need great people on all levels of government who are actually going to use the position when they get there point to really make a difference policy wise and put the money, follow the money. Where are people making those investments? And so the 3 C's I want to leave people with. Number one, we have to have a consciousness. We have to stay woke and not be seduced by anybody, even if we support them. What have they done for us generationally? I'm not talking about individually, but I'm talking about generationally. So we got to have a consciousness. Number 2, we have to have a commitment that some of this stuff, as Dr. West, this is long distance stuff that we're doing, that the struggle is forever. So we are forever in the struggle, to quote the Reverend Dr. Otis Moss. And lastly, there has to be a consequence that when we elect these people in office, and if it turns out that they're not doing what is necessary to advance our communities generationally, then when it comes time for re-election, they got to go.
Yeah, that's a power. That's 3 very powerful seats. I especially like that 3rd one. I'm not a fan of not primarying people. I'm not a fan of people having lifetime seats.
Come on,
no sir. If you're not doing it, or ma'am, if you're not doing a job, gotta go. I'm a big fan of all that. All right. So I don't know how much longer we got with these. Nina, anything else you want to add to that? I want to get everything we can out of you before you run off on us.
Everybody just vote. But voting is the end of the process. It's not the beginning. I mean, to have activists like Sister Zakiyah, who knows from not just from a professional perspective, but she's a mama, she's a grandma, so she's feeling this thing in her heart. Or to have people like Brother Jesse Smith out there on the battlefield running. There's an African proverb that says that one should not build their shield on the battlefield. Well, Black folks, brown folks, working class folks of all ethnicities, it's shield building time. And so whatever we want to see as our reality in 2018 and 2020 and 2024, those times might seem so far off, but they're right around the corner. What are we going to do to change education policy so that Sister Zakiyah is not talking about this same thing 4 years from now? What are we going to do in workforce development? What are we going to do to make investments in Black businesses who will hire Black people 9 times out of 10 that keeps our community strong? There's a book I want to recommend, Michael, to the folks that are in the Google Hangout, and I hope that they will tweet this out, put it on their social media.
Absolutely.
But the name of it is Brown is the New White, and it's written by Brother let me get his Steve Phillips. I'm sorry, Steve, know him very well, but Brother Steve Phillips. And really the gist of his book is that the new voting majority, the new American majority, is really Black, brown, and progressive white folks in this country, that we are the majority. And so if we are the majority, we need to unify and have an agenda. We have to organize and to push for the things that we want in the political space and in the public square, if you will, and hold people accountable when they don't answer to that, because ultimately we are only as strong as the people that we lift up. So Brown is the New White, written by Brother Steve Phillips. It is a must read. The new Black, brown, and progressive whites. Progressive Army, we can do this, and we can have the type of nation and world that we desire, but we got to put some sweat equity on that thing. So God bless everybody. I hope you have a tremendous weekend. Thank you, Sister Zakiyah, for everything that you do. Brother Jesse, thank you for being one of many progressives in the arena. And Michael, you're doing a great job of being a moderator. So God bless you all.
Thank you very much. All right. All right. That was man, that was that. Now, how am I supposed to follow that?
Oh, man.
That's Senator Nina Turner. That she always with the prophetic fire. Always with the prophetic fire. All right, I'm sorry, Zakiyah, you had to follow that. You just had to follow that. So I don't know if you need. It's ditto, yeah. Yeah, ditto, cut it. Yeah. What she said.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Michael, on all fronts in regards to your list. I think you were right on. You know, Senator Turner got me all turned up now, so I'm trying to take a deep breath. But I think, you know, what we experience in this world of choice that folks like to throw around that word choice so much is that for 10 years, from the time this lawsuit in New York State, the highest court upheld it and said, yes, New York State, you're not meeting your constitutional obligation to provide every child with a sound basic education. That we parents, educators, students have gone up to our state capitol in Albany, have spoken to governors, including our current governor, Governor Cuomo, to the state legislature, to people that represent us in office, as Senator Turner said, and they have made the choice. It is a choice in the $1 billion budget to not fund over 10 years an equity lawsuit. That if any of us had it was a lawsuit brought against any of us, and for 10 years we hadn't fulfilled it or paid it, not only would there be interest on top of interest, but we'd probably be in jail, right? And so I always question, why is that? Why is that okay for Black and brown children to not experience art, to not experience music, to not experience sports programs, right? To not have access to advanced placement courses to get them to the next level, right? To not have access to after school programs that keep them off the street. Why is that? Why are we making choices to not fund that? And in the frame of understanding, and in New York, I don't know how many people know, 50% of the children in New York City live in poverty. And someone once said, if 50% of children had a cold, it would be a state of emergency. So why is it not a state of an emergency? And I go to, it's because the children that are being impacted by this are Black and brown and poor kids. And I think across the state, it's not new. It's not something different. We've seen it in Chicago. We've seen it, you know, in Philadelphia. We've seen it all over this country in regards to there's tons of equity lawsuits because we have to sue to get what's due us. And then when we sue and we win it, we still are fighting years, decades later to get that money to schools. Meanwhile, we've lost generations of children who didn't have access to that. Black, brown, and poor children, once again, across this country. In the same vein, we will not make the choice to tax the 1%, people who have enormous money, who will never want for anything. We won't even tax 1% on the 1% because, quote unquote, it's not the sexy thing to do to tax people. Well, I say it's not the sexy thing to do to starve our communities of opportunities, to deny our children of dreams, of fulfilling those dreams. I say that's not the sexy thing to do. Because what we need folks to do, not only in New York, and that's part of our fight that we're doing around the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. I don't know how many people know. I just spent, myself and 20 other people just did a 150-mile walk to Albany. Bodies on the line, boots to the ground. And I brought my 15-year-old son with me to do it. And he was at the front the whole 10 days. Never complained once. Did the walk and understood the importance of doing this walk because he heard the stories in every city that we passed to get to Albany of inequity and things that children were not receiving. So I think you're right. Your list is right on. And I think we need to get back in this country and ensuring that those who have do need to pay more because equity is not equality.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And one of the things that I'm sorry, just before we get to you, one of the things that that bothers me is, and as Nina said, and as we all know, that there's three things in our nation that help you succeed, right? It's number one is having access to capital. Number two is a decent education, and number three, have an affluent and or influential peer group. Without those three things, there is no success. And the foundation for that is having a decent education. And if we have to have the systems in place so we can reach out for the others if we don't have them already. So I think a lot of the things that we're missing are easily fixed. Like you said, it's not. Some people say it's not sexy to tax people, but when Bernie Sanders was talking about free college, it was a less than 1% tax on Wall Street speculation. What if we do a 2% tax? It's not going to hurt them. What could we do with that 2, 3, 4, 5% tax? It's speculation. They won't even see it. And it also serve the purpose of cooling the market a little bit. So there's no downside to stuff like that, you know?
It's only downsides to the folks who have the money and don't want to give up, or who have legislators in their pocket, and they don't want to upset the folks who are kind of filling their coffers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw that today and yesterday with somebody's response to the pipeline. But we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna do that today. We're not gonna. Jesse, I don't want to mess up your train, so we're gonna let you slide in there before I mess it up for you.
well, hey, I'm just gonna.
Jesse in Congress. I don't know what's going on.
Well, ahead, I'm just gonna say, some of the things that I've noticed on the campaign trail here in East Alabama. And from talking with a lot of educators, a lot of parents, I have a 9-year-old who attends public school, and I plan on keeping him in public school because I believe it's important that he grows up around people from all different walks of life, because that's where empathy comes from. If you live around a particular demographic and there's never any struggles, no problems, everything is just great. Well, when you see that, you blame the people instead of realizing the system inadequacies that place those people in that position. So again, some of the things that I've discussed with people, having educated members of the Board of Education, electing members of the Board of Education who have experience in education. Teachers are taking out of their paycheck to subsidize their classrooms. Greatness never goes on sale. Greatness costs what it costs. That's just how it is. And if we can spend billions of dollars overseas in all of these countries, providing aid to people who want to kill us, providing aid to all of these countries who are leading us in many different areas, and ignore education and ignore the kids that are living in poverty, as Zakiyah was so eloquently explained, and then to think that we have veterans, we have members of our military, our armed forces, who have kids who attend these schools. They go overseas and fight for their country. They are fighting for a better education and a better future for their kids and their grandchildren. And they get home and their kids are exposed to inadequate healthcare, inadequate schools. And oh, by the way, if you are that military family member and you're married, your spouse may have to get a job that's going to take that, that particular spouse out of the home for an extended period of time away from the kids. It's the situation that our education system in right now. It's at the bottom. But again, when we have legislators, when we have leaders and politicians and parents and administrators and teachers who care about the future of public education, if someone made a comment on one of my Facebook posts about education, how can I, what benefit do I see in public education? Well, when public education is adequately funded and supported, public education is a beautiful thing. Like I said, I graduated from high school with a lot of people, and we all graduated from a public high school. And there are people who are doctors, attorneys, all different professions in this world. They all come from, those public schools. So I will, and I'm saying this to the people in the 3rd District of Alabama and Americans that will also benefit from having a congressman that feels strongly about supporting public education, whether it's special education, whether it's bringing in new types of research and technology to offer these kids. So again, we can prepare them for the skills and the jobs of the 21st century. When we remove home economics and auto shop and woodworking and plumbing and welding, all of those trades from the school system, we essentially remove the value of work from the school system. So we're taking kids and putting them in a system, no longer teaching them how to think, but teaching them how to test. And then when they graduate, we put them out there in the streets, expecting them to know how to work. And so I believe we have to take advantage of the opportunities we have in public education. And that's simply making sure that every child, whether they're living in poverty or not, is afforded a high quality, well-funded education. And every teacher who are teaching every one of those kids are entitled to a livable wage. I just think, it's absurd that they have to spend a dime of their money to subsidize their classroom.
Absolutely. All right, Jesse, thank you very much. All right, we're gonna use my fancy graphic that I borrowed. Dave, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go graphic 1. All right, this is this shows the stratification of high school students in Illinois using the Prairie State Achievement Exam. The results based on results and income. Okay, I don't know. Can you guys see the graph?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So on this graph, if each colored line represents income level, and also represents it represents their how well they did in this exam. And this graph to me speaks volumes. If you'll notice, some of these lines meet, but they never cross. So basically what it's saying is you're based on your income is going to decide how well you do on this test. And that is painful to look at, right? So what they're saying is no matter how good a student you are, how good a cohort of students you are, you will never reach the heights of these kids that already have money, and they're already on third base, and you don't even get a chance to get to bat if you don't make a certain amount of money, if your family's not making a certain amount of money. And we all know we just went through a crash, and we all know about how intergenerational wealth does not function in our communities. We're being, in some ways, we're being set up for failure. Zakiyah, I'd like to hear your input on that graph and from your experience.
Yeah, no, we are absolutely being set up for failure. I was listening to just a minute ago, just listening and hearing how, you say people respond to, your Facebook page or whatever. How could you support public education? Like, we see that all the time, right? And the schools that I know of, again, not just in New York, but around the country, and Black and brown communities are absolutely being set up. Because if decades previously, you were able to access tons of, when I was in school, I stayed in myself quite a bit. You couldn't go on a train, you couldn't get on a bus without a student having an instrument in their hand. You just would bump into each other. You just would have it. It wasn't in school. You had to be in band or chorus. You had unlimited amounts of sports programs that you could participate in. You had all those things, shop, and all those, things we had to. They didn't necessarily move girls into shop. That's a whole nother conversation. We had stenography and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I won't hold that against anybody now.
We appreciate that.
Those things are not there. And if you cannot, and they've been replaced by testing. They've been replaced by this this crazy thought that if we drill and kill, if we use testing, high stakes of testing, not the way they're supposed to be, which is an assessment, but to fire teachers, close schools, and to demonize the teaching profession, as well as those children sit in those schools, label them as failures, right? And so if we don't think that all those things impact not only physically a building because you're getting rid of a school, but morally, the students, parents, and children that sit in those schools, right, year after year. And in New York, we saw 160 plus schools close under Bloomberg, right? Across this country, we've seen thousands of schools closed in Black and brown communities, period, right? And so when we look at testing, as a parent, as I shared, of 8, only my son is the last one in school. He's a junior in school now. The other 7 have graduated out of public school. But when you look at how testing is being used, it's not about assessments. It is absolutely about everything around making money, even the money in regards to taking the test from organizations like Pearson and others. It's become such a money maker that even when you look at statistics like that and look at the poverty based on the testing, is it a fair assessment even from that perspective? Because if you're closing schools, you're labeling children and teachers as failures, you're not paying teachers a rate of pay that they're livable for them, so they move into the suburbs. And at the same time, you're not equitably funding schools and you're privatizing the system at the same time. Like, this money that's based for public schools is coming out of the same pot of money that people who push charters are talking about. So if we already don't have art and music, and we're pushing and privatizing and creating more charters, and we're not saying that they're good charters, I'm just saying charters in general. If we're pushing more of those public dollars are less, and they don't translate and don't transfer to our schools well, to already underfunded schools. So I think what happened is, with this high stakes of testing, we've used it as a hammer, not only on children in schools and public education, but on democracy.
Absolutely, yeah, because a better informed electorate is going to make a much better country. Absolutely, yeah. Zakiyah, let's stay in touch, because I wanted to have a debate about on my show about about charter schools. I have my own ideas, some good, some bad, but let's discuss that if we have some time. All right, Jesse, what do you think about that graph?
Well, you know what I think about it. I think
I do, but come on, let everybody else know.
You know, I mentioned in the beginning, income has a direct influence on how well a kid does in school. And there are many different nuances that goes along with that. But we can talk about how things currently are, but I believe it's important to talk about how can we get past our current state. And I believe the way that we get past our current state is acknowledging that we need 2 things. We need additional public policy that support the need of the Black community, but we also need personal responsibility among members, families, to help those teachers, to help the administrators. I mean, we can build new schools in every Black community around the country, but if the parents aren't supporting the teachers and helping them move forward the educational agenda for those kids, then eventually, that public policy, I won't say went to waste, but didn't have the maximum impact. We need to look for the maximum impact, and how can we affect the most amount of children in the positive way possible. I mean, these kids are going to be, I lived in Germany for 5 years, okay? You have a lot of people who never resided outside of the United States. So they never get to see and interact with kids from different countries. Well, I can tell you, the kids in Germany, they're doing a whole lot different type of education and pursuing education as we do here in America. I mean, I was one of those band students walking around with an instrument. I didn't know what I wanted to play at first. I started out with a saxophone, went to a trombone, and wound up playing the trumpet. But all of those instruments were accessible. All of those programs were there. We need to ensure that not only we look at the things that were successful in the past and adjusting them to meet the needs of the 21st century, but we have to also think of, promoting 21st century policy. Kids, we need to start teaching kids how to balance checkbooks. We need to start, re-engaging the civic policies. Again, not to monopolize the time, but if I look at my map, I have a map on my board in my office here that has the voter turnout records in all of the counties. Now I can go to the particular area with the lowest voter turnout, and I'll normally find a failed or a education system that is below par. So what am I saying? not only do we need to have public policy, and we also have to have personal responsibility from people. We need to get involved into the political process. Black and brown people, get involved into the political process and stop making excuses. Stop saying, oh, well, I'm going to leave that to them, and complaining when there's nothing that is done in your favor. So this is the time for us to acknowledge that we have things that we must do as Black and brown communities, uh, and personal responsibilities that we must take as well. But we must also ensure that we are expecting, and Nina put the 3 C's down, but I like the last one as well, making sure that there are consequences that go along with the actions of these politicians when they ignore our children.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Come on in.
I just wanted to say, I think, as someone who started off as a parent volunteer for a number of years, and not knowing what organizing was, that is the key to what we want to do and how we move forward. I've been connected to organizations all across this country, youth organizing organizations, as well as parents, as well as intergenerational organizations that for years, decades, 20 years or more, have been organizing. And there's often a misconception in our communities that we as parents don't care about our kids, don't care what they do. Look how they dress, look how, like, they're so caught up in what our children are wearing, and so caught up in, maybe we don't have a college degree, or maybe we come to school in our pajamas, like that means something, like that they values us. Yet I know that there's parents, including myself, and young people across this country who are now adults, who are youth organizers or doing youth organizing work, whose voice was not valued then, is still not valued. And that what's the problem is that when policy is being set, there is no conversation. We are never brought into the conversation before someone decides to do something in our community. The fact, and even afterwards, we're never brought into conversation to say, how are we doing with this? How is it working? Is it working for you? It becomes the same folks who predominantly are white who are deciding the fate of our communities on every level. And I stick to education because that's my thing, but on every level, every time I turn around, there's someone who doesn't look like my children or people in my community who are deciding what is best for them. And often what happens, because they don't put parents at the table, they don't engage young people at the table to ask them, who better to ask than a young person who sits in the school, what can we do to make this better for you? Right? Who better to ask than the parents who send their children to the schools, how can we make this better for your child? And so I think, while I do agree, and this is part of the work that I've been doing for the last 16 years, which is working with educators, the key to this, the sustainable part of this, is parent and student organizing engagement in schools and on every level. Because at the end of the day, personally, I've been through 3 chancellors, 4 commissioners, and I'm still here, can sit at the table with each and every one of them, and they can't say anything that I don't already know. And so just like when we're in schools and we're with teachers and we're with principals, when they disengage or when they retire, guess who's still there? I'm there, or somebody else is there, because now my grandkids go to that school. And so what better way to engage us in every aspect of the school? Like, for example, in community schools, I think that's one of those solutions that we need to really engage in this country, which is not just to say it's a community, it's actually to engage the community and to have them be a crucial, integral partner in how well that school works and what's happening in that school. And when it doesn't work, that they have say, not advisory, that they have say in whether or not that should stay or not.
Absolutely. One of the members of the Progressive family, Brandon Sutton, he's a PhD candidate, and that's his area of specialty, is how communities interact with schools and trying to get schools to listen to the people in the community and trying to build structures to help people help people become more involved. And I think without community input, I think we just run in circles, and it becomes a way to bypass some sort of oversight, right? Because who should have more oversight than a parent and a student over how our school system functions? And I think it's become a, like you said, a money-making scheme. Some of it good, some of it bad, a good chunk of it bad. But again, I'm trying not to upset anybody today. so we're gonna sort of kind of move on. We're gonna go to our second graphic, because we're gonna talk a little bit about intergenerational wealth and equality, because this is, of course, we're talking about Black Lives Matter. So we're gonna Dave, our second graphic, or sorry, we only have two. We ain't all that fancy. All right, our second graphic, and this just to take a look at, and I did the math. This is from 1619, when slavery, the slavery of African people began, up until now, up until 2016. I did the math. 87% of our time in this nation, we have been something other than full citizens. 87%. We couldn't own property. We were property. We couldn't decide where our families went. We couldn't decide where we went. There was so much of our time in this country, we have been second, third, fourth, and fifth class citizens in this country, and it impacts how our inability to build strong communities, impacts our ability to build wealth. It impacts all of our opportunities. So we're going to go in the same order again. Zakiyah, do you have any input on that? Sorry.
It's so hard to
it's hard to quantify it. It really is. I did the math. I've been saying 80% because I guess looking at it, 87, that's 90% when you round up. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right. After just watching last Sunday, I just watched the 13th, the Ava DuVernay movie with my children and my husband. And just to see the numbers of the increase of Black and brown bodies in prison, from a couple of 100,000 to 2 million plus. And understanding that many of those young people, many of those adults start off as young people with it setting on the path from the school to prison pipeline through school. In New York, we spent $300 million on police in schools. Let me say that again. Wow. $300 million to put police officers in school. Wow. Right? And so talking about priorities and where we choose to put our money, right? We work with an organization called the Urban Youth Collaborative. And I am very clear that the school to prison pipeline, and we've seen it, whether it's from President Obama having to say we will no longer suspend 4-year-old babies, right? We see that over and over again. And we see the children that are the ones the most likely to be suspended are Black children. Both boys and girls are on the lowest point of that, or the highest spectrum, I should say, of the most getting suspended the most. We know what that impact means when you get suspended more than one time, how it decreases your chances of graduation, how it decreases you're more likely to end up in that system. But yet and still, we have regulations and policies on the books all across the country, right, that many organizations and groups are trying to get rid of. To suspend, you can suspend kindergarten through third grade students. These are 5-year-olds to 7-year-olds?
These are babies. Those are babies.
Exactly. Again, Black children are seen as criminals. White children are seen as creating crime, producing a crime. That is very different than seeing someone, because your value then becomes I'm a criminal. Whereas a white child is seen as you committed a crime, which means that there's room for fixing
rehabilitation. Yes.
Right, rehabilitation. We also know that Black children are seen as 4 times older than they actually are. So a Tamir Rice happens because he didn't look like a child, right? But yet white kids play with guns all the time outside, and you don't see that happening. And so this is a direct correlation to all of that, which is why, I think the power of youth organizing, I can't express it enough. Who better to talk to, who better to speak to than young people about the impact, and how seeing numbers like that and knowing that 87% of the life of people that look like you was spent in some kind of enslavement or your body being some sort of state sanctioned violence on your body. And because that's exactly what it is. And to your point of talking about charters, in New York, we see that number, actually across the country, we see zero tolerance policies in charter schools ballooning to the point where they have charters that say, we sweat the small stuff.
That's just extended cherry picking, and that's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah,
that's one of my pet peeves with charters is that cherry picking piece. Yeah, absolutely.
We call out, and it doesn't matter. We don't call if young people's bodies are being violated, rather it's through suspensions, on their way to the school to prison pipeline, not funding their schools equitably, pushing them out, English language learners, all those things, we stand up for them, whether you're in a charter school or a public school. And I think that's really powerful because it's not always the opposite way in the charter industry. They don't stand up for our children. And they are able to do what they do without any kind of recourse, accountability, or oversight. And it's something wrong when we create systems.
It's my second pet peeve: oversight, lack of oversight.
You cannot tell someone, or you don't have any authority anywhere because you're publicly funded, privately run, to address that. There's no accountability. How dare we put Black and brown children in those positions? This is not about, because we've created a system where we can't talk about charters. If we critique them, we're against them. If we say something nice about it, we're completely for them. I beg to differ. Anything that has to do with children, Black and brown children, it is our obligation to critique it. I don't care if it's public education or charter school education. So yeah, I think there's just this path to school to prison pipeline that is only going to be fueled more than whole prison status statistics if we don't begin to address the fact that it's not okay for kindergartners to third graders to be suspended.
Yeah, every time I'm privy to a discussion about charters, the pros and cons of charters, the pro charter side always, if you close your eyes, they sound just like Fox News, the same type of rhetoric. I refuse to believe that Black people can't understand how things work. I mean, it's just, if you close your eyes and really listen, it's the exact same lines they shoot out at you. I'm like, this is not a conversation. This is you can't have a conversation like that when everything the person says against your point is some sort of denigration of the people you're trying to serve. No, that's not that. I'm sorry. We're going on to my show. I'm sorry. Jesse, you had any input on our 87
public education without talking about privatization. It just cannot be anymore. It's not.
No,
it's
you
not.
just can't. They're going hand in hand, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Jesse, you had some input about our 87% of our time in this country. Oh, Jesse, you're mute.
Yes.
Can't hear you, Jesse.
All right. Sorry about that.
You didn't want to talk to me, Jesse?
No, I got you. I got you. You know, you know, when we think about where we are today in mass incarceration, and we think about who is impacted by mass incarceration the most, those kids. Those kids who have to go to school, have to see other kids' parents at school, and for them to know that their parent is in jail. A lot of times their parent is in jail for doing something that the average white person wouldn't go to jail for. I mean, my campaign manager is a white lady. I mean, and she's an awesome lady. She drives everywhere we go. You know why? The stand what stresses you out and what stresses me out are totally different. You know, I set my cruise control on the speed limit and I drive. She gets in the car and she just drives. However, you know, if she crosses a lane, if she makes a U-turn, there's no, you know, sense of you're doing anything wrong. So, you know, I know and I notice that the differences exist. But when we think of how mass incarceration really impacts our children, how mass incarceration really impacts teachers, parents, but most importantly, those caregivers who are caring for those children. Here in the state of Alabama, again, our prison population is 200% over capacity.
Wow.
Yes.
Damn.
So basically, in the state of Alabama, the only people who are guaranteed healthcare, education, and jobs are prisoners. They're guaranteed to have
Wow.
healthcare by law.
Wow,
They
Jesse.
have books and libraries and all different types of educational opportunities there. And they also have, again, here in Alabama, the slave labor movement is so strong here in Alabama. The prison guards went on strike with the prisoners.
That's true.
So again, when we think about the overall impact of our criminal justice system and mass incarceration, I really believe, again, it goes to political engagement. We have to engage the system. We have to enlighten ourselves, educate ourselves, and then we'll be empowered. But until then, we're going to allow these system inadequacies that exist to be there, and all we'll do is complain about it. The complaint time is over. It is time for us to, as Zakiyah mentioned, about, organizing. Parents,
Yeah.
I went to my son's school when he first started elementary school, kindergarten. From kindergarten to second grade, I made sure he was checked in, he was ready to work prior to leaving those classrooms. And he went to 2 different schools during that time period. One was a magnet school, and one was just a regular private school. Huge difference in the teachers' responses, and the huge difference in the educational curriculum, huge difference in the condition of the school. I mean, it was unbelievable. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that particular instance made me say, while I'm running for office, and once elected, I'm going to make sure my son stays in public school. It's important that we ensure that all Americans are afforded, again, a good education. If not, that pipeline to prison is exactly where you're headed. And I think we can head that off by understanding we know the system exists. Now it's time for us to find viable solutions. And as Zakiyah mentioned about, again, organizing, it's the best way forward.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we down to our last 15 minutes, folks, and we're gonna unfortunately now I feel bad because we went to get some solutions done. Now the last 15 minutes we're gonna try to talk about some solutions, and now we're not gonna have enough time. All right, I'm gonna stop running my mouth. Zakiyah, let's talk about some solutions. What do you see, or give me 1, 2, 3, whatever you think is best about what are our solutions going into the future in education, in our status, the status of Black people in America, so on and so forth. I know that's a lot, but if you don't mind, please.
So I think one is really important, and I don't think they're in any particular order. I didn't put them in any order. I think, CFE in New York is just one example, but there's dozens of equity lawsuits. And so we need to definitely equitably fund schools. And that means not what our governor said, which was that he's trying to shut down the last monopoly, which is public education, or the denial that he's giving, that he gives more money. As I shared, equity is not equality. That means that districts and communities, school districts that have higher needs students need more money. That just makes sense. You can't give them the same thing you're giving to someone who's a low needs district and think that you're going to get a better income, better outcome. So we shouldn't have to file lawsuits. We will, but to get equity into our community and funded our schools, I think is really important. So we need another thing is we need to be taxing the 1%, at least the 1% on the 1%. These hedge funders are buying our democracy. They're giving money to legislators and all kind of folks. They are funding the privatization movement, whether it's prison privatization or public or education privatization. They're funding it. But yet don't want to give up any money. We have wealthy folks. I'm not talking about the average Joe. I'm talking about people who are making big money. 1% on at least 1% on the 1% could absolutely help in regards to funding education, housing, like the list goes on and on if you think about what it could fund. And I think also we need to ensure that we are valuing and understanding that what's going to take for our community is to bring trust. And that when we don't have trust, we don't trust the system, We don't trust people because we've seen people helicopter in our community year after year, whether they look like us or not, and helicopter back out and promise us a whole bunch of stuff. And at the end of the day, we're worse off than when they came in. And so it really is about building trust and understanding that there's organizations across this country and our very communities that are doing amazing organizing work on the ground, that parents and young people are putting their bodies on the line every day. Whether it's young people in Philadelphia who have been walking out of their schools because they don't have nurses, and young people are dying from asthma attacks because they don't have a full-time nursing school. Or it's the parents and educators in Chicago who went on a 34-day hunger strike to get a school from shutting down in their community because it was the last school that was in their community, and they didn't want their children traveling through gang-infested communities, and because the violence was spiking. Or rather, it's us doing a 150-mile walk to Albany because 10 years is way too long for children in our communities to wait for the state to take action. These are just a few examples of ordinary people doing extraordinary things over and over again, and they're happening. And we need to make sure that we're looking and engaging with those very organizations to hold them up, to open up doors and conversations just like this we're having, so people can understand Black and brown people are not sitting on their butt doing nothing. They never have and never will. And that if we get past that mind frame of believing that they are, then we can help elevate and raise up their causes in a really powerful way. And I think finally is, if we don't begin to talk about race and classism in this country, if we as quote unquote people who want to call themselves progressives don't want to talk about it, then how the heck do we expect those who don't care about it to even raise or elevate this? And we have to understand that we have to be the first ones to step up and step out on those conversations. And we need to be paying people $15 an hour minimum wage if that's what it is to make a living wage, whether they work in McDonald's or they work in some other place. Because if people are making less than $15 an hour and they still have to be on welfare, that is not living. That is barely getting by.
That's survival, absolutely.
So we need to really make sure that we're paying attention to all these things, hold each other up as community, not tear each other down. And when people are on that frame of tearing down, sometimes it's okay to walk away and say, you know what, that's not how I get down.
All right. Thank you very much, Zakiyah. Very much. All right, Jesse, you're up. I don't know if you're gonna be able to follow that, brother.
Man, that's a hard one, man. She put it down. She,
All right now.
Hey, thank you for that. I've actually learned a lot from Zakiyah, and I definitely hope to one day speak with you at greater lengths on your experiences, because I think it's important to know all different spectrums in order for me to be able to make an educated decision. So I'll definitely,
I'm holding you both to that. I'm just gonna put that out there. I'm gonna hold you both to that.
Well, thanks.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Thank you. Well, my three little points I'd like to end with, again, political engagement. Political engagement, I believe, is paramount. I mean, you can't, if we have a problem with how the system is not treating us, then how can we continue to elect people that really, that we believe don't have our best interests at heart? Not you want to stand up and be countered or not. Secondly, corporate engagement. I believe there's a need to have corporate engagement. We have corporations like Walmart who are major employers in this country, and they're not paying any taxes. So the fact that they aren't paying any taxes and their workers are able to go and qualify for government subsidies, they are draining the system. So if we're going to ensure that education is funded and addressed at all levels, these corporate interests, these corporations must ensure, they must take an interest in ensuring that the labor pools in those areas are educated, that they have an educated workforce to reach out to. And lastly, you know, I say respect teachers, and not just respect them by saying, hey, teachers, I respect you, but we have teachers who have sent people, taught astronauts, rocket scientists. You know, we have, these teachers are very, very skillful, and from all accounts, the great ones have a calling to do that. And I believe as citizens in this country, we must ensure that our educators are no longer treated like third class citizens. They should not have to go to these schools that are grossly underfunded and grossly neglected. I mean, they're coming to do a job to help our nation. And as a nation, we must get behind those teachers. And I'm a champion for teachers. I have a lot of respect, because just think about one kid. I have a 9-year-old, and you know what? That little guy is all over the place. I teach him manners. I teach him respect. But there are parents out there who don't take that time to teach their kids that. So we have these teachers in the classrooms, and I'm not breaking it down based on race, but understanding that we have teachers in classrooms that are exposed to kids that may have some type of underlying problem that's ongoing. And lastly, on that point, is taking into consideration military families. You know, being a military family, I think it's important to highlight the plight of military children. You know, when that dad or that service member, that dad or that mom goes overseas, well, they both and those kids are actually suffering from that disconnection. So when you consider the fact that these parents are now overseas, these kids come to school with a stress and a burden that those teachers really, a lot of them aren't trained to deal with. So we have to look at these children, all children, especially Black and brown kids, and not look at them as the stereotypical views that's put out there. We have to get to know these kids. I have a kid that wears his pants sagging that volunteered for my campaign. And you know what? This kid is brilliant. But if I had stereotyped him just based on the fact that he didn't pull his pants up, I could have missed out on an opportunity to learn some things. This young man taught me some things today. So I just think, you know, again, we have to respect our teachers and ensure that the process of educating our kids is beneficial for the kids, the parents, and the teachers as well.
All right, now that's what I'm talking about. All this prophetic fire this evening. That's what I'm talking about. All right, so we're getting ready to close out, folks. I really can't add anything to that, so I'm just keeping my mouth shut. Zakiyah.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask if I could share something. Go ahead. I didn't.
And I was just getting ready to go to you. And so when you finish sharing something, if we go a few minutes over, it's all right. This is the internet. We don't have to keep a schedule. But so just when you finish talking, please let everybody know how to get in contact with you and anything else you want to let folks know. Please share away.
So 2 things. One is you kind of mentioned it earlier on. I need people to go on social media, keep paying attention to Stand and Rock. No Dapple, this Dakota pipeline. We need to support them. Their struggle is our struggle. They're trying to protect our water. We've seen what happened with Flint. So please go to social media and support them. They're being maced. They're being shot at. Not new. The pictures look like the civil rights movement and dogs and all kind of things happening. And we need our presidential candidates, whether we agree with them or not, to be talking about public education, which they have not, and to be talking about Stand and Rock, which we know why Donald Trump isn't, or why isn't Hillary Clinton. So the way you can contact me is
Oh, you're
I don't know.
echoing, Zakiyah. Oh, you're echoing bad, Zakiyah.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what happened.
Me too. We're both echoing. Is it fixed now?
Zakiyah.
Okay, Zakiyah, let's try it again.
You can email me at Zakiyah.
Ooh. All right, Anoa's in the chat room. Anoa, can you share? So you can share Zakiyah's contact information in the chat, please. I hope she heard me.
I did.
I can come in and help out here. Yeah, I don't know. We have an echo all around.
Everybody's echoing. And we've been set up. All right. Are we still echoing?
You're not.
Okay. All right. Zakiyah, you want to try it again before we go to Jesse?
Hello?
Okay, good. No echo now.
ZAKIYAH@AQENY.org. Follow me on Twitter at ZANSARI8. And please reach out to us. We're doing, and go to our website, AQENY.org. You can see all about the CFE campaign. You can see pictures from our walk. You can see a lot of the reports that we put out that are really informative. So yeah, please look me up.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Zakiyah. Now, something I forgot to mention about Mr. Jesse Smith. Sorry, first class Jesse Smith. He's a combat veteran. So everybody, support your troops out there in the ballot box. Come November 8th. All right, Jesse, come on, talk to me.
Hey, I believe you said it all. I'm just happy again to participate in this panel. I mean, I learned a lot, and I look forward to doing them in the future. So if you'd like to reach me and stay in contact, Facebook.com, Jesse Smith for Congress, and on Twitter, JT4 Congress 2016. Snapchat coming soon. Instagram, same as Twitter. But I look forward to continue to fight on behalf of Black and brown people and on behalf of Americans. Having served 14 years in the military and 4 combat tours overseas, it does me no better service than to look at these men and women in which I'm running to represent and to tell them that I got your back. So I appreciate you having me on, and I just look forward to continuing the fight, regardless of what happens on November the 8th. I'm in this, we're in it to make a difference, and not a difference for me, but a difference for the United States of America. I've seen so many horrible parts of the world, and there's absolutely no way that I'm willing to sit back and allow America to veer in that direction. So thank you again, and hey, follow me on Twitter. I'm live right now.
All right, everybody. That was Sergeant First Class Jesse Smith. He's running for Congress in Alabama. I'd like to thank him and Zakiyah Ansari. She was amazing on this panel. Yes. Really appreciate her input. Of course, our good friend and sister Nina Turner. We're still kind of floored by her presence. All right. We won the lottery here, and also this whole thing, this whole panel. This is David Grossman and Noah Changa. This is their operation. They allowed me to do this panel. I rolled a 7 when we got this awesome group. So I'd like to thank them, especially Big Dave. Dave is always in the background. He keeps us out of trouble. I'd like to thank Brandon Sutton. He's in the chat room moderating along with Anoa. He's out. Brandon's playing bouncer out there on our chat room. I'm Mike Redwine of the Louisa Project 2027. You put that in Google, you'll find me everywhere we are. Okay, so you can follow me personally on Twitter at Mike_Redwine. That's Mike MIKE _Redwine REDWINE. Please follow me on Twitter and please subscribe to us on YouTube. So that's the Louisa Project 2027. It's named after my daughter Louisa, and she goes to college in 2027. And we're trying to make the world a better place by the time she gets there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. We're almost on time. 2 minutes off. We were close. All right, Jesse, Zakiyah, could you please stick around after this? And I think that's it. Dave, you got anything to say?
I do. Just one thing. I just want to mention. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I'm not going to put my mug on face right now, my mug on screen right now. But that's a prime example of why I stay back here. I can't even speak. I did want to just let everybody know that coming up we don't have a specific date just yet, but it will be announced soon, is the next panel. We have 2 left from the 5 that we currently have planned. We will likely go beyond these 5, but the next one is going to be Black Lives Matter Beyond the Names, and essentially we will have some guests. We're working on the final lineup, but we want to focus on those lost and how we can honor them, how we can make sure that everything that we've seen the past few years and what is continuing to happen isn't in vain. So we want to kind of honor people and maybe bring some specific stories up and show the side that the media doesn't. So I just wanted to bring everyone in and up to date on that. But on that, I'll bring it back to Mike and we can close out.
All right, that was Big Dave Grossman. You often hear him on the Benjamin Dixon Show. Yeah, he runs the show back there as well. I would like to thank Benjamin Dixon for letting us use his channel, so he doesn't cuss me out later. I'm just kidding. He wouldn't say anything to me about it.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. All right, so that's it, everybody. And please keep an eye out for when the next panel is going to come. And as Dave said, I think we're going to continue to do this. This was a great panel. Thank you all very much for participating, watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Thank you. Good night.